a young royal who was born into the shadows of tradition, is quietly reshaping what it means to be a princess in the modern world. While her older sister was groomed for the throne, Sophia found freedom in being the spare, and that freedom is turning heads. From invisible princess to a new kind of royal icon, Sophia's quiet rebellion against traditional royal expectations, her rise in public consciousness, and how a teenager is becoming the voice of a generation that expects their royals to be real, not robotic. Being a royal sounds glamorous. The palaces, the ceremonies, the photographs. But there's a side nobody talks about. The invisible weight of coming second. Infanta Sophia was born into a world already decided for her. Her older sister, Leonor, was the future queen. Leonor got the attention. Leonor got the expectations. Leonor got the pressure. And Sophia? Sophia got left behind. For years, nobody really cared about the younger princess. She was just there, a background figure in official portraits, a footnote in royal announcements. While Leonor attended state dinners and special ceremonies, Sophia was forgotten at royal events. Photographers barely glanced at her. News outlets mentioned her as an afterthought. And her younger sister also attended. They'd say, almost as a joke. But being forgotten has a strange power. It's freedom in disguise. While Leonor was being molded into the perfect queen, learning speeches and diplomatic smiles, Sophia was learning something else entirely. She was learning how to be herself. She watched her sister's every move being scrutinized, criticized, analyzed. She saw what happened when you followed every rule perfectly. You became predictable. You became safe. You became untouchable, but also invisible. And maybe that's when Sophia realized something nobody expected. Maybe being second wasn't a curse. Maybe it was an escape route. The Spanish royal family has centuries of tradition. Everything they do is controlled. Everything is proper. Every move is calculated. But traditions are built on the assumption that nobody will challenge them. Traditions assume silence. They assume obedience. They assume that young royals will accept the role they're given without question. They didn't count on Sophia. What nobody knew at that time was that the quiet princess was watching everything, and she was getting ready to do something the royal family had never experienced before. IT started small, too small for most people to notice. But for a royal family obsessed with control, even the smallest crack in the tradition is an earthquake. Infanta Sophia started appearing in public differently. She wasn't robotic. She wasn't stiff. When photographers came, she didn't just stand there with a fake smile like every royal before her. She actually smiled. Real smiles. The kind that reach your eyes. The kind that make you believe she's a real person, not a character in a centuries-old play. Then came her social media presence. The Spanish royal family finally embraced Instagram and platforms where younger people actually spend their time. And Sophia wasn't posting stiff, formal photographs. She was posting content that felt genuine. Casual photos, behind-the-scenes moments, glimpses of actual life, not the sanitized version the palace usually allows. But this was a rebellion to the palace. This was survival. The Spanish royal family was facing a problem. Younger people were losing interest in the monarchy. Why should they care about tradition when Instagram influencers offered authenticity? Why should they respect distant, cold figures when TikTok creators showed their real personalities? The crown was becoming irrelevant to an entire generation. Sophia changed that equation. What happened next shocked the royal establishment. Young people started paying attention, not because they had to, not because it was tradition, but because she felt real. She felt like someone they could actually relate to. She laughed. She seemed to enjoy herself. She didn't look miserable wearing a tiara like her sister sometimes did. And then there was fashion. Every royal before her had a uniform, structured dresses, conservative styles, approved designers. Sophia started wearing things that felt modern, younger, fresher, nothing outrageous, nothing scandalous. But clearly, obviously different from what royals were supposed to wear. Then came the public appearances where she was genuinely interacting with people, not just shaking hands and moving on, actually talking, asking questions, looking interested, making eye contact. All the things that sound simple, but break every rule of royal protocol. But here's what the palace didn't expect. Her approach wasn't just changing how people saw Sophia. It was changing how people saw the entire monarchy. Suddenly, the royal family seemed less like ancient history and more like actual humans trying to survive in the modern world. The older generation of royals watched carefully. Some were supportive, some were worried, and some were starting to feel threatened by how much attention this teenager was getting. Nobody predicted what would happen when she turned 17. 17 years old. That's when Infanta Sophia became impossible to ignore. It wasn't one single moment. It was a series of moments that built on each other like a wave growing bigger and bigger until it finally crashed into the shore. And when it did, the Spanish royal family couldn't pretend anymore that she was just a forgotten younger sister. The turning point came during official state appearances. Photographers started capturing her doing something radical, being happy. Not the frozen, practiced happiness of traditional royals. Real, genuine, unguarded happiness. And the internet noticed immediately. Videos went viral. Social media posts got millions of views. People were genuinely excited to see her, not out of obligation, out of actual interest. Do you think fame helps people or does it slowly destroy them? Millions of people started asking themselves after watching Sophia, and they shared their answers in the comments. They debated whether this young princess could actually change the monarchy from the inside. They speculated about whether she'd break tradition completely or find balance between old and new. The palace realized something critical. They had a weapon against irrelevance, and that weapon was a teenager. But success at that level comes with a hidden cost. The more popular Sophia became, the more pressure she faced. Not from social media followers, not from the public, from her own family, from an institution that had ruled for centuries and didn't know how to adapt. They wanted her authenticity, but only the version they could control. They wanted her to be relatable, but never too relatable. Never so real that she actually seemed like she had opinions. Never so independent that she might challenge the system. She was being asked to walk an impossible line. Be yourself, but not too much. Be modern, but respect tradition. Be popular, but remember your place in the hierarchy. And worse, there was a comparison that nobody said out loud, but everyone felt. Leonor was being trained as a queen. Leonor was being prepared for the throne. But Leonor was boring. Nobody was making viral videos about Leonor. Nobody was excited about Leonor's future. The media was obsessed with Sophia. For a royal family obsessed with order and hierarchy, this was a problem they'd never had to solve before. The tension between what Sophia wanted to become and what the institution demanded Shibi was building. And everyone close to her could feel it. Family members were watching. Advisors were taking notes. The public was waiting to see which side would win. Then something happened that forced the entire situation into the open. Let's pause and look at something important. Why does a teenager in a royal family matter to millions of people around the world? Why are young people actually talking about a Spanish princess like she's an influencer or celebrity? The answer is simpler than you might think. She's not like them, but she's also not like every princess they've ever seen. Every princess before Sophia played the same role. Perfect hair, perfect clothes, perfect smile, perfect manners. They were objects to admire from a distance, not people to connect with. They represented tradition and duty and sacrifice. They showed young girls what you had to become to be important. And most young girls looked at that and thought, no thanks. That's not a life I want. But Sophia changed the equation. She looked like she might actually want to be alive. Have you ever felt like the world expected you to be someone you're not? To follow rules you didn't create? To make choices that weren't really your choice? That's what Sophia represents to millions of younger people. She's proof that you can be born into a system, trapped by expectations, surrounded by people who want to control you, and still find ways to be yourself. That's powerful. Social media amplified this connection. When Leonor appears in official photos, she looks official. When Sophia appears, she looks real. Her followers aren't watching because they feel obligated. They're watching because they want to know what she'll do next. Will she push further? Will she break more rules? Will she actually become the princess who changes everything? The Spanish youth saw in her something they rarely see in people with power: potential for actual change. And not change that comes from revolution or scandal. Change that comes from simply refusing to disappear quietly into tradition. Young people across Europe started following her accounts more than they followed their own celebrities. Why? Because she represented something they didn't know they were looking for. Proof that you could come from privilege, you could have power, and you could still be authentic. You could still be real. You could still care about the things that matter to your generation. But here's what made the establishment nervous. This level of popularity wasn't accidental. And it wasn't just about being nice or modern. It was about influence. Real, measurable, dangerous influence. Because when millions of young people start looking to you as a symbol of authenticity and change, you become a threat to the old system. You become someone who could actually reshape how power works, whether you intended to or not. And that's exactly when things got complicated. Every teenager faces a choice. A choice between becoming who they want to be and becoming who others need them to be. Most teenagers can make mistakes, try different things, fail in private. They have space to figure themselves out. Infanta Sofia doesn't have that luxury. Every decision she makes is public. Every outfit choice is analyzed. Every expression is photographed and dissected. Every moment of her life is potential headline material. This level of scrutiny is suffocating for anyone. For a teenager trying to figure out who she really is, it's nearly impossible. But what makes her situation even more complicated is that the people controlling her life aren't strangers. They're her family. The Spanish royal family has watched Sofia's rise with mixed emotions. Pride, yes. She's bringing younger people back to the monarchy. That's valuable. That's saving their institution. But also fear, because they've realized something they can't control. They can't dictate her popularity. They can't manufacture it. She's earning it by being herself. And that terrifies an institution built on people following orders. Queen Letizia, her mother, is caught in the middle of this conflict. She's modern herself. She came from outside the royal family. She understands change. But she's also bound by centuries of tradition and by her role as a queen. She has to balance supporting her daughter's authenticity with protecting the monarchy's reputation. Meanwhile, Leonor is watching her younger sister get more attention and generating real questions about succession, about worth, about whether following every rule actually guarantees success anymore. That has to sting. The palace started setting boundaries, more formal appearances, less casual content, reminders about proper behavior. It was subtle, but it was there. The message was clear. You can be yourself, but only the version we've approved. And Sofia was forced into an impossible position. Do what makes her happy and risk disappointing her family and damaging the institution she was born into? Or compromise, accept limits, become a little less authentic each time she follows another rule? That's the tension nobody talks about with royals. We see the glamour, we see the freedom and the privilege, but we rarely see the invisible chains. The pressure to be perfect, the knowledge that disappointing your family isn't just personal drama, it's a national story. What happened next revealed just how much pressure was actually building behind the scenes. We've reached a point where Sofia's story becomes less about what she's already done and more about what she's about to become. And here's the thing, nobody knows what happens next, not even her. The future of the Spanish monarchy isn't written anymore. It never was, really. But people pretended it was. They pretended that everything was decided centuries ago, that history couldn't be changed, that a royal simply accepted their role and played it exactly as their ancestors did. Sofia has proven that assumption wrong. She's at an age where she could go in 1,000 different directions. She could fully lean into her celebrity status and become a social media sensation like no royal before her. She could retreat back into tradition and try to repair the tension with her family by being the perfect, obedient princess. She could find some middle ground that nobody's seen before. She could go to university and use that time to figure out who she really is away from the constant spotlight. The palace is waiting. The public is waiting. Her own family is waiting to see which version of Sofia she chooses. Before we talk about what historians will eventually say about her, subscribe because stories like this show what really happens behind fame and success. And sometimes the most powerful moment is when someone your age refuses to accept a life that was chosen for them. The truth is, Sophia represents something much bigger than one teenager in a palace. She represents a generation that won't accept outdated answers to modern questions, a generation that demands authenticity from their leaders, a generation that believes you can honor tradition while also being yourself, that you don't have to choose between duty and happiness, that institutions can evolve, and that change doesn't have to destroy what came before. That's revolutionary thinking for a royal family. Her story is still being written. Every decision she makes from this point forward will either reinforce her image as the princess who changed everything, or will prove that the system is too powerful to fight, even for someone with her position and platform. But one thing's certain, the monarchy will never be the same. They learn that they can't ignore their youth anymore. They learn that tradition only survives if it adapts. And they learn that sometimes the most powerful voice in a room is the one who refuses to be loud, the one who is just authentically, unapologetically themselves. If you thought Sophia's story was shocking, wait until you see what's happening with other young royals across Europe who are watching her and asking themselves the same questions. That story is even more dramatic. Check it out next.